Joining us right now to talk about the economy and the markets is Joe Moglia. He is former TD Ameritrade chairman and CEO and the chair of athletics at Coastal Carolina University. Joe, we want to talk to you about a bunch of stuff, but why don't we just start with what we've seen from the economy and how the markets have really played off of that? I mean, Jamie said how great the economy's doing, but he also said later that most of the time the markets try to confound the most people as possible, and this could be setting up for one of those times. I think he's more concerned about what the future may hold.
You know, I think Jamie, being probably the second greatest CEO of our time in the financial world, he often, when he comes on, he's got to be concerned about what's going on in the world. He's got to be concerned what's going on in the economy, because he's got to be prepared for that.
Risk management.
Yes.
Yeah.
Were you the first?
Well, I didn't want to say that because I thought you would, and then I didn't want to correct you. So I was just trying to.
I'm in disbelief.
I was just trying to be.
I was just trying to process in his head. I'm still trying to process what the F you're talking about. Now I get it. Yeah, okay, I got it.
And I think he's right in terms of where the economy is today. I think one of the things that I've got a little concern with, if you look at the savings rate for the individual consumer, today it's around 3.7. Last year was 4.4. Traditionally, it's been about 8%. Now, that's significantly less than what it has been. So they're going to have less money to spend, obviously, as time goes on. So there are certainly concerns we've got with the economy. I think the biggest one, our economy is in good shape. We've got a great labor market. Inflation's under control. History's on our side. One of the things that keep coming up on the show is, once you have a 10% correction. The reality is, since the financial crisis in 2008, there have been 11 positive years. In those 11 positive years, there's only been 10% corrections.
Wow.
So we recently saw about a 5% one. So I think we may or may not see that. If we do, it's once. It's not going to be the end of the world.
You think it's changed post-financial crisis because of the Fed's intervention and the government spending that's gone into all of these issues from the pandemic on?
Well, I think when we've had the significant crisis we had, like with regard to the pandemic, the answer would be yes. Then we had the financial crisis, and we had the bailout. So I'd say the answer would be yes with regard to that. But right now, our economy is in reasonably good shape. The concern that I've got is what's going on geopolitically. I think it's more tense today than it was a month ago. I think I applaud the aid packages that have been approved, but that's just going to further irritate, I think, Russia and China and Iran, and that's just going to exacerbate the tension that already exists. So that's the biggest concern that I've got in the back of my head.
Oil prices still at like $83 a barrel, barely. That's the one really surprising thing from all of this geopolitical potential fallout, particularly when it's focused in the Middle East.
I would agree, but because unless we think there's not going to be any more problems in the Middle East, I think the risk to oil prices that they go higher rather than not, and that's going to have a negative impact on the economy.
We have bounced around today and every day, just this idea that the markets have hung in so well. I mean, you saw a 5% pullback in the S&P 500, and that's been erased this week. What gives? Earnings coming in strong. Some of the inflation numbers have been stronger than expected. The Fed less likely to cut. Leisman was just pointing out that there's only a 16% of a Fed cut come June. The numbers are coming down for July and even September at this point. Everything's clear?
Yeah. I mean, I think everything really looks pretty good, with the exception, I think, of the geopolitical issues going on. Even, again, historically, in an election year where we have an incumbent, there's a 12% gain that year, and that's, I think, 16 election years in a row. So the economy is in good shape. And I think the Fed's doing a good job looking at the data, and they'll do a good job making decisions as they assess that data. But we're okay. There are significant issues, I think, around the world that can have major impact, obviously, on us. But right now, the market doesn't seem to be overly concerned with that.
Joe, we talk to you about the markets and the Fed a lot. We don't get the chance to talk to you very often about what's happening in collegiate sports with the NCAA. And that's something you know very well from your years as a coach in the NCAA and your years in experience now at Coastal Carolina. What do you think's happening with bringing in NIL and the splintering of the different leagues?
I think the biggest issue that I've got with regards to NIL is not the players getting paid. There is no structure. There is no organization. There's been a lack of leadership from the NCAA from the very beginning. And frankly, college athletic leadership has not stepped up to fill that gap. The only way, in my opinion, and there is a lot of talk about doing this now, that this is going to get fixed is the Power 5 schools totally break away from the NCAA, period, have their own executive team that is totally autonomous, separate from the NCAA altogether. They have to, if the NFL modeled themselves or ran themselves the way college athletics is today, they would go out of business. So you model yourself after the NIL, you have collective bargaining, you have salary caps, and eventually you'll figure this out. But right now, it's the wild, wild, wild west. There is, with regard to our team, for example, there's not a player in our program, there's not a kid we talk to on the portal or a kid we're recruiting that doesn't begin with what kind of NIL opportunities we have. This is absolutely a business, and the athletes we have in college today are far more, especially in football, far more professional athletes than they are student athletes. What upsets me the most is nobody's talking about eligibility, nobody's talking about graduation rates, nobody's talking about what you're going to major in. It's just about how much money I'm going to receive. So this needs structure, and right now it hasn't got any.
And the problem with this is what? I mean, as a fan, I know what the problem is. It's a different team every single season. It's hard to follow sports like you used to for your own alma mater. But what's the problem from your perspective on what's happening?
Lack of leadership. We need somebody to be able to step up, and everybody's going to operate or is operating in a way that's under their own best interest. The television revenues are significant. So the Big Ten, excluding the schools that are coming from the West Coast, this year could very well make $100 million apiece just for football every year, and that may go up. There's nothing to do with NIL. But so nobody wants to necessarily change that because of the amount of money that happens to be involved. But at the end of the day, this cannot go on forever.
Why not?
It's chaos. It's chaos. Again, there's no structure. There's nothing along that line. That's why I'm adamant. I've been saying this for 3 years now. The Power 5 football has to break away. If it does and gets a legitimate executive team and models himself after the NFL, it will work out.
Everybody else will follow suit?
Well, they got to get that right first. And then at least they have a right model. And then you can kind of go on from there.